Hey, so I ran into a ton of technical difficulties filming this, and then after I filmed it, realized I kept hitting the table, and there's like this weird crackling audio that I think is the wire from my microphone hitting the table too. But I really don't feel like reshooting this, so we're all just gonna pretend it's a stylistic choice, okay? Okay. Hey there. So I'm a little late to the party, but the other day I was watching Louis Rossman's video, essentially kind of walking back his old criticisms of iCracked.
Cannot get Chase Bank to give me a loan for 1/4 what is currently in my bank account. But these individuals seemingly is a nice guy. Seems like a nice guy, but he also strikes me as somebody who doesn't exactly know how to do much other than replace an iPhone 3G screen. It's oh yeah, just take $40,000. Oh yeah, just take a couple more $1,000. Oh yeah, just take 5 or 6 figures in loans. Oh yeah, here's a 6 or 7 figure credit line. Just have it. Oh, what you don't make net profit? You're not profitable? Who cares? Just take it. Perhaps there was something that they were doing that I was not doing. And perhaps they're doing things correctly. Because as I sit here today, I'm reading the news and I get to see that Allstate has purchased iCracked. And we don't know exactly how much they have spent, but Allstate had, I believe, they joined SquareTrade, and SquareTrade was acquired by Allstate for $1.4 billion. So if Allstate is making acquisitions at the $1.4 billion level in the repair and insurance industry, it's likely that iCracked was acquired for, at the absolute minimum, I would guess, say 7 figures. But at the end of the day, who's laughing? Me? Not able to get a loan for even 1/4 of what's in my business bank account, with a wall that I have not even had time to paint because I've been working 12 to 16 hours a day every day just to keep up, or the individual who is now a multi-millionaire whose company was acquired by Allstate.
And I have some thoughts. I've watched quite a few of Lewis's videos, and while there's some stuff that he says and does that I disagree with, there's a lot of stuff that he's right about. One of the things that he does that I like is he seems to be genuinely trying to push the right to repair movement and educate people about how to repair their own devices and the flaws in a lot of modern consumer devices, especially MacBooks. And to me, that makes him pretty decent. So if he ever watches this, there's just kind of one sort of general theme that I'd like to try and get him to understand. The guy at the top of iCracked made his money by setting up an exploitative gig economy that was based on bullshit. You make your money by having an honest, decent business and educating people, and as far as I can tell from your videos, actually providing a real job for the people under you. You see, I worked for iCracked for a little while. This is the anesthetic mat they gave me. And I can tell you that at every single stage of being involved with them, from the onboarding process to the day that I rage quit, was just filled with incompetence and laziness and shitty infrastructure and terrible parts and just absolutely abysmal communication. It was a clusterfuck of impenetrable nonsense and blatant incompetence and just laziness. In no particular order, here's some experiences that I had with them. When I first tried to sign up, I was given several different contacts with no clear indication of who was for what, and none of them replied on a timely basis, and sometimes their information would directly contradict each other. This came to a head when I tried to get a certain tax form filled out, and it ended up being such a nightmare that I eventually just gave up. So I put that aside, I coughed up the entry fee, and I went through their training. Their training was just a series of YouTube videos which had wrong information in them. I had been involved with phone repair for long enough before I tried to get with them, and I knew enough. And I pointed out the incorrect information that was in their videos, and I provided proof of it, and they didn't give a shit. The result was just this resounding yeah. I was also not told that the part system that I was going to be using, I don't remember what it was called now, but it was their way of making sure that you had parts, even if, you couldn't afford to buy them all up front. They'd basically just loan you parts, and when you did a repair, you'd send the old screen back, and everything was good. Well, the thing is they hadn't quite straightened out the logistics and the details surrounding that yet, so that whole system was in beta, but I wasn't told that. So again, in communications with them, they would act like they had no idea what I was talking about half the time. When you're onboarded, you're given access to the jankiest piece of shit iOS app ever. You have to have an iOS device, or you had to have an iOS device to use this. And it was just garbage. And you were expected to complete and schedule repairs with this thing. You had to set up your service area by like manually plucking at zip codes in an app that was permanently kind of zoomed in because it was like they had some kind of accessibility feature turned on, but it wouldn't let you zoom out far enough to actually see like a good picture of your service area. So you were constantly having to like fiddle around with that. It was just junk. The in-app messaging, they gave you this sort of virtualized phone number. It worked a lot like Google Voice, except messages wouldn't go through half the time. The database on the device would get corrupted to the point where it like seemed to affect my account. You know, at one point I had 3 or 4 threads that were deleted but kept coming back up no matter what I or the database team, I guess you could call it, tried to do. The in-app part store and the help section were just a Safari web view, which, okay, but every time that you moved to a different section of the app, it would just sign you out. So it was completely useless. You might as well just go use the actual website with actual Safari. At one point, they updated the app so that it wasn't in this weird permanently zoomed in state, but they didn't like fix the layout. It was almost like the layout was hard-coded. So after they did that, there was a whole bunch of buttons and stuff that just didn't line up correctly, and it made certain portions of the app even more unusable. If you wanted official support, you were expected to go to their Yammer page, where you could do 2 things. You could complain about the issues you were having and get nothing helpful in response, and watch management spout off the latest LinkedIn buzzword-filled bullshit about whatever they were doing. If you tried to do anything helpful, if you tried to suggest a change, like one time I suggested a change to the form that the user sees when they sign up, that would save everybody a ton of time, and I basically got told, suck it up, it's your problem to deal with the system's mess. And speaking of Yammer, you better hope you have a good password manager, because the main iTech account, the iTech store, the help desk, the pseudo janky ass Gmail account that you had to set up, and of course Yammer were all completely separate accounts. Now, let's go back to that email system. They didn't actually run their own proper email server. What they did is they used some kind of janky Gmail forwarding system. So what you would have to do is you would have to set up a Gmail account, right? And then have the email address that they gave you sort of forwarded to that Gmail account. They didn't run their own email server, basically. And it just made everything, it was another account you had to keep track of, and it was just janky. It was just another thing that was just completely janky. At any point in time, they would have 2 entirely different order chains, because again, the part system they put me on was in beta and they didn't tell me. They would have like upwards of 6 styles of different box labels. They may or may not send me the wrong part 3 times because they can't keep track of this shit. What labeling you were responsible for using when you sent the part back was entirely dependent on what they had decided to do that week and what labels just fate has decided to bestow upon you when you got the parts in the first place. And the parts themselves were garbage. I did 2 things. 99% of the repairs that I did were screen repairs and battery replacements, or screen replacements. The screens were almost universally too thick. They would stick out the front of the phone far enough where you could definitively feel it, and the batteries didn't have any brand name on them. There was one customer, I had to replace his battery twice. There was one time where they sent me the wrong battery 3 times. It was just a mess. The system didn't take into account the time and location of dispatches where you already were. So multiple times I had it try and schedule me for repairs that it was literally impossible for me to be on time to. And again, when I brought this up to management, they just told me to suck it up and deal with it. They had this scheduling algorithm that would give more repairs to the people that did more time, which sounds okay on the face of it, but the problem is it creates this feedback loop where unless you do this like 9,000 hours a week, you're never going to get any dispatches. So for someone like me who just couldn't make this their real job, it was just something I was trying to do on the side, it was completely bone dry because everything was going to the people who were doing this, you know, as their freaking life's calling or something. But they heavily marketed this as something that you could do as a side gig. But their scheduling algorithm just created this negative feedback loop that made that impossible. And there is just a whole bunch of kind of non-tangible stuff. For example, that Yammer page that I mentioned, or when you got an email communication through your janky Gmail forwarding setup, you could, if you were clever, if you were smart, you could read between the lines of the things that they were saying, and just look at the things that they were implementing and why they were doing it. And if you know anything about database setups or system administration or stuff like that, you could just tell that their backend was just held together with rubber cement, duct tape, and toddler snot. It was just horrific. I even had one of the support members outright tell me that the two different inventory systems like existed on two totally different like universes, and that's why they had so much trouble. Why are they like that? There's no reason for them to be like that. And I'm sure I'll think of something else as soon as I put this video up, or as soon as I stop recording even. But the main point is that eventually I realized that if I wanted to actually get any work done, I had to work around the systems that they had set up instead of trying to do things properly and with them. Because otherwise I just couldn't get anything done, even what little was being handed to me. So that was iCracked. That was the business that Louis Rossman seems almost jealous of in his latest videos. And again, maybe the guy who runs it or ran it, now that they've been sold to Allstate, is, you know, chilling on a yacht somewhere. But look, the problem with startup culture and the gig economy isn't that it doesn't make someone money. That is the problem, that it makes obscene amounts of money, but it's all built on bullshit and exploitation. Look at companies like WeWork that got an obscene amount of money to go dump some cubicles in office buildings somewhere, and now they're all tangled up in lawsuits because all the money was basically fake. Look at companies like Uber and Lyft, where you have to put wear and tear in your own car, pay for your own insurance, your own gas, you get no benefits, and so in the end it works out to you getting paid pennies to be a less protected version of a taxi. Look at the stuff that you went through with your contractor that didn't know what he was doing, but he was still in business, at least for a bit. Look at the realtor you were working with that constantly lied about the floor space of all of the buildings that you were looking at, and she basically told you straight to your face that that's just how it is. Hell, your entire channel is basically fixing MacBooks. Apple's $1 trillion company, man. So if you were going by the same logic as you apologizing for being mad at iCracked, then by that same logic, you owe Apple an apology. Because they're $1 trillion company, so clearly they're in the right? But yet you see every day all the mistakes they make, or all the poor decisions that they make to get where they are. So yeah, if you gave up your integrity and ethics, it would be pretty easy to make money. But if all you care about is making money, then go be a drug dealer, or start a payday loan company, or get startup money for a Bluetooth connected water bottle or some shit. And of course that's actually a real thing. I guess I should just never underestimate the tech industry. I mean, why is he holding the bottle like that? Is it also a Bluetooth headset? Does he have music on that thing? Or is it just that heavy? Like the battery in it, like you have to fucking hoist it above your shoulder like you're building a fucking log cabin. How much money did these people make? 627,000. Jesus Christ. Maybe Louis is right. I don't really know how to end this bit and just transition, so I'm not going to. Some of the richest people in the world are oil barons who are profiting off of destroying the environment, or life insurance company executives who make all their money off of a business that shouldn't exist by all rights. Hey, editor me here. I meant health insurance, not life insurance. Sorry. Don't fall for the lies. Don't put the blame on yourself, because you were right to be angry. The reason that you aren't making obscene amounts of money is because you're operating a competent and legitimate business. Don't confuse operating a profitable business with operating a decent one. Don't fall for the lies of late-stage capitalism and think that the amount of money in your account is the same as your worth. In this broken economy, getting money is not proof of anything that matters.